This is Justin Rocke, play-by-play broadcaster for the Daytona Tortugas, and you're watching the New Legends on Deck podcast with hosts Brian Koss and David Conde. The 2-2 pitch struck him out swinging. Just your casual 92-mile-an-hour slider down and in. And Jacob DeGrom has recorded 6 outs in the Florida State League this year. All 6 have been strikeouts, 1 away in the bottom of the first inning for Stephen Layton. Some Mets fans clapping along the 1-2. Struck him out. Fastball up and away at 101 miles an hour. Welcome back to Volusia County, Jacob DeGrom. At the belt. Here's his 0-2. Struck him out swinging. Chased the 93-mile-an-hour slider away. And Daytona strands a man at third against Jake in the second. No runs, one very, very long hit. The 0-2 pitch from Jake. And he got him swinging. Back foot at 91. And DeGrom has collected his 4th strikeout tonight. 1 away in the 3rd inning. Old prognostications on him when he was drafted and coming up through the Mets organization. The 1-2 on the outside, Black at 99, strike 3 call. 5th punch out tonight for DeGrom. 2 up, 2 down for the righty in the 3rd, brings up Jack Rogers. The righty's 1-2, struck him out swinging. 99-mile-an-hour fastball up above the shoulders. His 6th strikeout tonight. 36 pitches for DeGrom through 3 innings, and the entire crowd here at Jackie Robinson Ballpark is giving him a standing ovation.
Hello and welcome to episode number 8, I believe, of the New Legends on Deck podcast. I'm Brian Koss, and I'm with our co-founder, David Conde, and the play-by-play announcer and media relations specialist at the Daytona Tortugas, Justin Rocke. Hello, guys.
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us, Justin. This David and I, and David even more particularly, has been kind of mixed up with the Florida State League for quite a while. So we're really happy to have somebody from the Florida State League on and getting some updates over there. But you know, my first thought is, like, what I like to do is give everybody a chance to tell us their background and how they got into what they're doing. So take us through. I know you said you're a Penn State guy. So I assume you studied media and broadcasting over there. And,
yeah, was a broadcast journalism major there at Penn State. Was there from I was there from fall of 2010 to the fall of 2014. So I was a sophomore when the Jerry Sandusky scandal broke. And it was crazy that sophomore year. I mean, everyone was sort of walking around like zombies for 6 months. I'd never even heard of who Jerry Sandusky was until I saw it on the newspaper about fraternity house that Sunday morning. You know, one of those moments you don't forget. But yeah, no, I mean, I know it was a wild time then, but I love my experience at Penn State. Got to do some incredible things. Got to call Penn State football games, basketball games, baseball games, what have you. But I love my experience there. After I graduated, well, actually before I graduated from Penn State, I took a semester off and got my first job in baseball working for the Brevard County Manatees in 2014. And I've really bounced around baseball ever since then. 2015 and 16, I interned with the Tennessee Smokies, the Cubs AA team. 17 and 18, I worked in the Appalachian League for the Johnson City Cardinals in 17. The first year of the Greenville Reds in 18. And that season 18 in Greenville helped lead me to the folks in Daytona. And I've been with the Tortugas from 19 to now. And I've also worked up at West Point, Army West Point, in West Point, New York, not too far away from where I grew up, where my folks live in New Jersey. in the winter doing their women's basketball games and other various sports, everything varying from soccer and volleyball to rugby, which I had never actually even watched before in person or.
Now you're calling it, right?
Yeah, the first full game I ever called was the first full game of rugby I ever watched in my life. So there was a lot of research and studying leading into that.
Oh wow! So am I correct that you're down here for the minor league season, and then you're up in New York for the winter? You're like kind of like a. Sorry, you're like a.
I'm the.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like the reverse snowbird. That's
what I was gonna say. Yeah. You knew where I was going with that. Yeah.
Exactly. No, the running joke for the last number of years, really my whole professional career, has been that I have it totally backwards, in that I come down south when it's boiling hot outside, and then trek back up north when it's snowing and freezing cold. And somehow I need to find a way to maybe flip that somehow, some way. But I've made it work so far, so I'm not going to complain too much.
That's too funny. Yeah, that's cool though. I did not realize that time frame in which also you were at Penn State. I actually just watched that ESPN special on the Jerry Sandusky scandal recently, and I had forgotten how crazy that whole situation was, and just the mass protests at Penn State and the taking down the Joe Paterno statue and all that kind of stuff. It was very interesting, and I remember it, but I also was like, wow, and to talk to somebody that was in Happy Valley the unhappy valley at that time, but that's crazy.
Yeah, no, it was a wild time there, and luckily that year, I got to have some of my first breaks and experiences, with big opportunities on air. And actually, before the scandal broke, I got to, host the, student radio pregame show for the football broadcast from Beaver Stadium when they were playing Alabama, which was surreal. And I guess it went really well, because after the story broke, the first game back was against Nebraska. They had beaten Illinois on a Saturday. The story broke the following Sunday. And then they were off the next week. The following week, they were at home against Nebraska, and they asked me to host the pregame show. I'm only a sophomore at the time, and I was sort of like, "Huh, like me?" And you couldn't ignore what happened, so I was making phone calls to anyone I knew who was a media professional who had been around the block. Like, "Hey, I'm going to say this. If you were my boss, would you, give me the go ahead?" And thankfully, that went well. And I remember James Lofton, wide receiver for a long time in the NFL. He was calling the game for Westwood One, I want to say it was, as a color analyst. We had him on as a guest, so he was a live interview for me there. Normally start an interview, "Hey, how you doing? How's it going?" And he just looked at me and just goes, "No, how are you doing?" And that's just one of those moments you don't forget. It was, it was an interesting time, but. It's always good to know that the toughest story you'll ever cover was as a sophomore in college.
Well, yeah, that's a great experience. Right in the fire as a broadcaster.
So
right into it.
I have one question. When you're going from you've gone with different teams, have you felt like it's been an easy transition to go from one team to the next? And what titles did you hold as you moved along to the different organizations before you reached Daytona?
I think it was luckily fairly easy. It felt like for me, making the transitions. It's always sort of awkward at the beginning, getting in to town, especially since so many of my jobs have been on the seasonal side of things. You're getting in, either a month, 2 months or so before the season begins. And in many cases, for me personally in my career, I've been acclimating myself and getting used to the tendencies of new coworkers and places like that. Only with the Smokies, the 2 years I worked there and then here in Daytona, and only the last 2 years in Daytona has it been, the same staff. Because of COVID and the pandemic, there was a lot of staff changeover in Daytona between 19 and last year in 21. Last year opening day for the Tortugas, the only people who had seen a Tortugas home game and worked it was my boss, our GM, and me. everyone else was sort of brand new because of all of the front office changeover and things like that. So it's been an interesting experience, sort of, having to adjust and, sort of find your footing within a new group of people. But I've been very lucky that in all my stops, I have really had no issues with any of my coworkers. The quote unquote onboarding process, and just getting into the swing of things with a new group has really created no issues. But yeah, I think the best advice for that is just, as long as you go in with an open mind and try and be as, kind and, understanding as possible, always, gets you brownie points, and always makes things a little bit easier when you're trying to get used to a new environment and a new work experience.
Cool. We, as Brian mentioned at one point, being that here at Legend on Deck, we started. The reason for it was the minor leagues. I fell in love with the minor leagues back in, I think, 2017, maybe. Not even, no, I'm sorry, before 2014, 2015, I fell in love with the minor leagues, and we started to pursue it. And I'm thinking, wow, I'm in Florida, and coming from New York, there's no really minor league seasons up there. There's Mets and Yankees, and moving down here and experiencing minor league baseball, and like, oh my God, the Florida State League. So back then was before the whole changeover. So we love it here in Florida State League. We've got to do so much with them. Share with us, why do you like the minor league so much, and what do you like best about working in minor league baseball?
I love that you brought that up, David, and that, I'm also, I grew up I was born in New York. I was born in New York City. My mom's from Brooklyn. My dad's from Queens. I spent a lot of my adolescence growing up in Northeast New Jersey, just on the other side of the George Washington Bridge. And that's exactly it. I mean, I was very lucky, got to go to a ton of Yankee games and Met games growing up. But as I got older, and particularly after my pro career started, sort of felt like it would have been awesome if there was maybe an extra minor leaguer team or two in the area, particularly an affiliated minor league team that, once me and my friends started getting our licenses and being able to start to have some independence, and have our own money, you can afford minor league games. It was, when you're 16 to 18 years old, you're not going to be able to afford tickets to, Citi Field or Shea Stadium or either of the Yankee stadiums at that time for me.
Exactly.
But you can afford going to a minor league game, anywhere between, $5 and $20 to buy a ticket, and any seat's a good seat in the house. So that's something I've joked about with friends a lot, that we wish we had more teams in our area when we were growing up. But ever since I've worked in minor league baseball, I didn't really know what it was about all that much until I started working in it, and I've loved it. Just the atmosphere of it. It's about baseball, but it's more than baseball. It's about community. It's about creating experiences, not just around baseball, but for fans and families. And everything is so, sort of compact, at least when you're at the stadium. There's very rarely a bad seat in the ballpark. Generally, the players are very easy to be reached. They're very accessible. And there's always something special about seeing a guy, before they're a superstar. There's some still in the minor league system, and your prospects, you work with first round picks or guys who signed for a lot of money, who are, they can't miss guys. They've got a lot of hoopla around them. But one of the things that I've always really enjoyed about minor league baseball, and I think, it's been one of the most fun parts, is seeing the guys that no one's heard of, no one has any expectations for, create names for themselves, and don't have to necessarily go on to become all-stars, but, just get to play in the big leagues or become established big leaguers, is always special. And the two names I immediately think of for my career are David Bodie, who's with the Cubs now, who was a roster filler with us with the Tennessee Smokies in 2016, just a guy that, like, warm body bouncing around. And the next year finally got a chance to play every day. And by the next year, he was in the big leagues, making noise with the Cubs, became a top 30 prospect. And another guy, my first year here with the Tortugas, Alejo Lopez, was like a 27th, 29th round pick out of high school in Arizona. He traveled all around, was born in Mexico. He lived in Canada for a little period of time with his family, then moved to the U.S. to play baseball at high school. And, you know, no one expected much from him, became the Florida State League All-Star that year. And by last year, it was hitting so well, the Reds couldn't keep him out of the big leagues. And he had a chance to make his debut and has had time in the big leagues again this year. And, you know, those are the kinds of things that have always fueled my fire, especially during the tough days. Because there are some tough days working in minor league baseball. They're long hours, especially down here in Florida with the heat.
Yeah.
But those kinds of things have always kept the passion brewing for me.
You know,
it's awesome.
Go ahead,
I was going to say, it's awesome you say that. We started this section called Prospect on Deck, and it was the guys that no one knew about, right? That we just write, and we would write stories about them, just kind of big, just a summary of where they've been, where they're going. Sometimes we would get an interview with them, and then you share that on Twitter, you share it on Facebook, and the family jumps on it, and all of a sudden you have the guy following you because they wrote about me, you know, because at one point we had a lot more followers than we're trying to build up again now, but it was just awesome to really share those stories of guys that no one really knows, because at the end of the day, they're journeymen, right? They are professional ball players, and what great thing to just get someone's name out there that you never know. He might be a star, but even if he wasn't, he has someone that wrote about him to kind of share his name in the game. So it's awesome. I love minor league baseball, right? If I can watch it all day long, I would. And the atmosphere and the view and the stands, and sit anywhere you want. It's awesome.
Yeah, I actually, you got me thinking while you were talking about some of these guys that came up. I was thinking back to when David and I covered the Florida State League All-Star Game a few years ago, and I just pulled up a couple profiles we did. Jonathan India was a Tortuga, and he's now the leadoff hitter for the Reds. So I was watching Reds play. I think they were playing I don't know, somebody the other day. It may have been the Braves. But I was like, oh, Jonathan India. I remember watching him in the Florida State League. And then I pulled it up. Hey, I wrote a profile piece on him on July 15th, 2019. So maybe I'll have to tweet that at him today. But the other thing, there was the Fire Frogs who got contracted, and that's going to lead me into a question for you. But they were the Braves affiliate, and they were here in Orlando, where I am. And the year that they started, I went to a couple of their ball games that had Austin Riley on their team, Ron Acuna Jr., and Ozzie Albies. They were all in the same. They all came up together, and now they're World Series champions. So it's a totally different thing when you start following guys at the minor league level, and then you see them. Turn on the TV and you see them playing in a big league park, and it's pretty cool. So my lead up or my follow-in question to that would be the Tortugas, and something we covered here. They were on the chopping block for minor league contraction when Major League Baseball decided they were going to consolidate the number of minor league teams, right? So you were there at the time, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So that's what I figured. So that happened, as I recall, between the 2020 non-season and the 2021 season.
Really, it sort of started, I would say, in 2019. I want to say it was like November 2019, November, December, that area. That New York Times article came out with the list of all the teams that, were on the chopping block, and the first inkling that something was brewing behind the scenes that nobody knew about. And I remember seeing that story break. I was at a friend's house in Ridgewood, New Jersey, at his apartment, and seeing it and going, WTF? Where is this coming from? Why is this happening? And so that was happening before the pandemic, before we were supposed to host the All-Star game in 2020 for the Florida State League, and then, of course, COVID starts to percolate in early 2020. I still have no idea how I didn't get it at that time. I was working Army women's basketball games, and we played in 4 different states in a span of a week in early March in the New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania area. And, the weirdest thing, the girls got eliminated in the league quarterfinals, and they were the lucky ones. They at least had some closure to the end of their season because the rest of the league tournament got canceled. And, that same week was the Rudy Gobert incident in Oklahoma City, and that, precipitated everything. And I remember that night going to bed, okay, I'm going to wake up the next morning, send an email to our president and say, like, hey, what do you want me to do? And before I could even wake up the next day, I had an email in my inbox saying, hey, don't go anywhere. So that's hanging over everyone's head during the 2020 season and the cancellation, ultimately, of the minor league season that year. And you're left wondering, because it all happened before the 2021 campaign, and you're if you're going to be on the chopping block and getting cut, you're not going to get a chance to say goodbye or have a send off or do anything really significant for your community and things like that. So all that was sort of hanging overhead. And I'm still in New Jersey this time. I never was down in Florida and really had no idea what was happening in the background, but was starting to hear or get some sort of vibes from people back in Daytona, like maybe we'll be okay. But I had no idea and was still preparing for the worst. And ironically enough, I think it was November 2020, somewhere around that time, maybe December. I was at the same friend's apartment in Ridgewood, New Jersey, and I'm looking at my emails, and I get an email from somebody with the Reds saying, hey, I don't know if anyone's told you yet, but if you can send us a picture of your ballpark, that would be great, because we're going to announce you in the next couple of days as one of our affiliates going forward. And I threw my phone up in the air and started screaming. And my friend said, what in the world are you doing? And I said, we're in. And
Nice.
that's how I found out that we had survived. And a lot of credit goes to our ownership, our executive staff, and a lot of thanks has to go to the Reds, because the Reds were the ones that wanted to keep us. That was a list, I think, this isn't definitive, but I'm fairly certain that initial list is something put together by Major League Baseball. And once they started acquiescing some of the decisions to the affiliate, the parent affiliates, and the clubs themselves, that's what helped open the door for us. And we're very thankful that we have had a great relationship with the Reds from 15 through 19, that they wanted to stay with us. And I think everything's been wonderful ever since, we committed that 10-year deal prior to the start of last year. We're in the process of making the necessary upgrades to our facilities. Thankfully, all of the upgrades that are needed are mostly to the player and team facilities, batting cages and locker rooms and things like that. It won't have too much of an effect on the overall historical structure of Jackie Robinson Ballpark, which of course is a U.S. designated national landmark. So things are brewing there. Things are starting to get in process of doing all that, and we're just so thankful to still be around and still provide great family entertainment and fun for not just the Daytona Beach community, but Volusia County and beyond.
Yeah, I think one of the things I thought, the franchise itself, I remember when this was going down, and I think the Daytona Tortugas franchise did a good job at promoting themselves. I know there was some kind of petition out there, to save the Tortugas, and to some of that credit, they played off the historical nature of the ballpark. They played off the fact that, if I remember combing through Florida State League attendance records, and the Tortugas I believe were at the top of the list for years and years in a row. It's a good market for minor league baseball. And I think that maybe the reason they were on the block is the Reds don't have a spring training facility here in Florida, whereas most of the other teams in the Florida State League do. And that'd be my guess, because I think they were trying to bring them closer to the major league affiliate. But it's really good to hear that about the Reds and how they invested so much in keeping Daytona, because it is a fantastic facility. You know, you don't have a lot of historic ballparks around anymore, and also it's a good market for baseball.
Yeah, no, it's a great market for baseball, and all you have to do is look at this past week from July 4th until Sunday, July 10th, here at Jackie Robinson Ballpark. I mean, we probably had somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000 fans through the gates, and that includes one day getting completely rained out because we've got our first year of the turf field in 2019. It was the first time I've ever seen this. It was such a deluge on Saturday that like the entire infield and outfield was like a moat. I've never seen that happen with a turf field before. But we were good to go by Sunday afternoon for the doubleheader. But between 2,500 some odd fans here for Independence Day on July 4th, great crowds on Wednesday and Thursday, and by far one of the coolest experiences of my life, let alone my career, with Jacob DeGrom pitching here. And from everything I heard, talk about community, everything he said post game and everything, I had heard leading into it was that it was up to him and he wanted to pitch here.
Nice.
He's from DeLand, Florida, about 30 minutes away from Daytona Beach. Played a lot as an adolescent in Ormond Beach, which isn't too far away from us, 10 minutes or so from Jackie Robinson Ballpark. I mean, we had like the Little League team or something like that he played for out at our ballpark. And he so appreciated the support from the community and the way everyone showed out and was respectful and, didn't give him a hard time, to the point where I think he really enjoyed himself on Friday night. And I think that says a lot about not just us, but our ability to work with other teams in our league with these situations, and just the passion for the community here in Volusia County and the Daytona Beach. I mean, it was, the joke I've said is if me, my boss, Adam McDonald, the voice of the Mets, and his boss got together on Thursday and scripted a perfect Friday for DeGrom, that's exactly how it went. And I think our community is a huge reason for why that happened.
That's a cool story. Yeah, he's a Stetson guy too. He went to Stetson.
Yep.
People forget they produced DeGrom and Corey Kluber out of Stetson. That's a really
and Logan Gilbert's off to a great start with the Seattle Mariners as well.
Right. So,
I had a question for you. So regarding the Florida State League, what it was to what it is now, right? How have the fans accepted going from, and some fans are smart baseball fans, not that saying not fans are smart, but they know the differences, right? They know the difference who they're watching and who's coming up, who's not. So going from top A, advanced A to low A ball, what has been the acceptance from the fans with that?
Luckily, it hasn't been as bad as you may have thought. I mean, there were definitely some pushback at the beginning, where it was like, well, some people are like, well, maybe I should get a discount for tickets because it's going from high A to single A, and all those kinds of things. But by about midway through last season, our fans, particularly our season ticket holders, started flipping their opinion, like, well, actually, we kind of like it. The guys are a little bit younger. There was a little bit more action maybe happening on the bases, a little more runs, scoring a little more offense, and things like that, because guys are not quite as polished as they were up a level in 2019 and prior. And the other benefit, I think, particularly at least for our fan base, was it was either that or nothing. Compared to what we experienced from the end of the 2019 calendar year to, the return of baseball back in May of 2021, we were just happy to have baseball, have pro baseball, have the Reds back with us. And I give a lot of credit to our fans for being smart and realizing those kinds of, aspects of the story as well, not just the change in level. And at the end of the day, our fans, by the end of the season, didn't care because we had so much talent come through Daytona last year. I mean, we had Ellie De La Cruz for, 2.5 months, Reese Hines and Andrew Abbott and all these different names that I didn't even mention that got to play at our ballpark last year and were so great to our fans and so fun to watch and work with on a daily basis. There was definitely some pushback at the beginning, but at this point, everyone's like that. That's all under the bridge. We're loving what we got right now.
So I have to say, you have a great voice for radio. And that's kind of my next what we're going to touch on now. And I don't have a great voice. I hate listening to myself speak. I do. It just doesn't. Brian has a great voice. But, growing up, we listened to the radio all the time. I used to grab my radio, listen to my game. That's all I did. Didn't really see much on TV. Maybe over the years I did. I mean, I'm not that old, but, so a lot of it was listening to the radio. When you call a game, you have to make it really come alive for the listeners. Give us an idea of what you do to really bring the game alive to your fans so they can feel like they're at the ballpark with you.
I've been very lucky that I've gotten to work in some really beautiful places. And, my mindset, going into a game is, I'm, the listener's eyes and ears. And I have to be as descriptive as humanly possible. And I don't think of it in this harsh of tones, but I think back to something that my dad said to me when I was growing up, and it had nothing to do with broadcasting. He's an accountant, but he's, he was always a very good writer. And he would always proofread my, stuff for English class or whatever essays I had to write in school. And he said, always assume whoever's reading this knows nothing. And that's, not to that extent when I think about it going in there, but that sort of helped me in terms of, okay, I've got to do whatever I can to help fill any gap my listener may have. And if that means I have to be a little over descriptive, that's what I got to do. So I'll try and, describe the uniforms early in the game down to, the tiniest detail if I can do so. With my descriptive powers, try and, say, okay, here's how far the fences are. This is what the sky is looking like. This is how the defense is aligned. If I don't hit everything in the exact play itself, I've tried to be maybe a little less descriptive during the play itself so I don't sort of fumble over my words trying to get everything in there. But after the fact, try and say, okay, hey, it dunked in just over the head of the second baseman in front of the charging in right fielder. Was it towards the line? Was it more towards the gap in the alleyways? And I think, just thinking along those lines has helped me greatly. But you also want to work in, it's baseball on radio. It's sort of like a talk show with some live action mixed in. So, just talking to guys and doing research to learn stories and keep our fans not only informed but entertained. Because I think that's something that's always really important to think about as a broadcaster. You got to keep, your audience engaged. Luckily, as you know, David, growing up in the New York area, I had the chance to listen to a lot of great broadcasters, watch a lot of great broadcasters in the New York area, not just baseball, but basketball, football, wherever. And just sort of used everything from those folks, the beauty of technology, MLB TV, and being able to listen to Vince Scully and Brian Anderson and so many other great broadcasters across the spectrum and taking little cues from them to be able to make my broadcast all the much better for those who are listening to us.
Awesome.
That is cool. Yeah, you got to really paint a picture for these guys, and it's a real art form.
Yeah, you know what? I think that's part of the beauty of baseball is that you can do that a little bit more than you can with any other
That's true.
sport out there. You know, there's always so much action in basketball or even football, especially
Right.
hockey. You know, baseball, there's a little more downtime where you can, you know, sort of set the scene a little bit more. You know, what's the smell going around the ballpark?
Right.
You got hot dogs, you got suntan lotion. What's hitting the nose? You know, things like that. But
Absolutely.
that's always been the beauty of it for me.
I don't know if you've ever watched the Knick games, but I guess one of the more colorful announcers, Walt Frazier, when he's announcing games.
He's my favorite. I love Clyde to death.
I was very entertaining.
I try it. Honestly, he's one of the guys that I take in stuff for from baseball because his vocabulary is outstanding. I use the word percolate quite a bit on air because I heard it from Clyde.
Yeah.
And so
when you said it before, it reminded me of him. When you said it, I'm like, wait,
yeah, exactly. So, like, you know, for any young broadcasters out there listening, you know, just because it's, you know, not the sport you're used to broadcasting, you know, listen to the way your words people are using, listen to the descriptive vocabulary being used because, you know, you can use that to learn and pull that for whatever sport you may be using. Before games, as much as I can, I pull up, there was a great thing, I think Deadspin had it many years ago, of like a placard of all the different phrases Doc Emmerich had used to describe passing the puck or shooting the puck in hockey. And there are many different ways you can use those words to fit it into a pitch crossing the plate or a ball being hit in baseball. And like, you know, it's the beauty of broadcasting is you can pull from, you know, other sports and broadcasters from other sports to help whatever sport you're calling.
Absolutely. That's for sure. Well, I wanted to kind of wrap it up with a question about we have a lot of players and coaches come on the show and they talk about their advice to young players in the game. But you're coming in from a media and broadcasting side. So I'd like you to share your general advice with listeners who might be interested in getting into the game of baseball from a business or a media side.
The best advice to me, especially if you're a broadcaster, and this is something that I gave as advice to the other student broadcasters when I was a director of our student radio station, is get as many reps as you can. It doesn't have to necessarily be physically on air going over a stream or something like that. I started my practice broadcasting when I was a little kid. My dad beating my head saying, hey, the 5'8" Jewish kids don't grow up to be Derek Jeter very often. So you should probably start thinking about other things you want to do with your life. And one of them was, well, I'm not going to get paid to play sports. I might as well get paid to watch. And I was an only child, and I was playing, baseball, basketball, whatever, video games. And I would start calling the games to myself in the basement. That evolved into calling, games off the TV. And then, after high school and, the last kid cut in baseball, reached out to my physics teacher, who was the varsity baseball coach. He was like, I'm not trying out again. What can I do? And gave a whole list. And one of them was public address announcer. And that was the first gig I got. So for those who are athletes and, want to get into broadcasting or those who just, were on the chopping block and still want to be involved, be proactive, reach out, try and get as many opportunities as you can. If you're, even at a game as a fan, go sit up, on the roof somewhere high atop and get a perch view and call the game to yourself. Bring a tape recorder with you. I've, spoken to older broadcasters. Kenny Albert has told me that many times that's how he got started, was calling games into a tape recorder growing up. And from a business side, it's sort of along the same lines. it's all about meeting people and making connections. So send emails, try and, if you're out at a ballpark, meet people, shake hands, try and, pick people's brains. There are a lot more people out there than you think that are willing to lend a helping hand and at least impart some wisdom about what it's like in their job and what it's like on a day-to-day basis. And other advice I can say is for interacting with players is the best advice I received was the locker room is their sanctuary. And so if you're a broadcaster, media person, you got to do something in there. Keep your time in there as limited as possible and give the guys their space, because if you do that, they'll, at least from my experience, ever since I learned that lesson, that respect has been reciprocated back to me. And I think that's helped me be a successful broadcaster, is when you've got the, respect and, the appreciation of the people you're broadcasting for, from the players and coaches standpoint, always going to make your life a lot easier and make your broadcast better, because they're going to be willing to be a little more open with you and tell you some, good information that you'll be able to use on your broadcast to, help you continue climbing the ladder like I hope to continue to do.
That's great advice. Great advice. Well said. So all those aspiring broadcasters out there that are listening, I hope you take note.
And reach out to me if you want to. I'm always open.
Perfect. Yeah, you're very accessible. I've been on your list for a while, getting the updates from the Tortugas, and I'm like, you know what? This guy, I always get his emails. I got to have him on the show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and he writes very good, very well written, detailed recaps of each game. So I'll put that extra plug out for you. In addition to being a good broadcaster, he's a good writer.
I've always felt those two things sort of go hand in hand. A lot of advice I've always received is read a lot. Also, broadcasters read a lot. That also helps that vocabulary.
Yes, excellent advice.
I also want to thank you for coming on to be a part of the show. We've always had a great relationship with minor league baseball, and this is just another way to kind of share, parts of minor league baseball. So having a media guy come on and really share your intricacies of what you do and how you go about it, and even where you've come, it really helps the listeners and the viewers to really say, hey, maybe I want to do that. How can I? So I really appreciate you coming on and being a part of this and sharing your information.
Well, thank you so much, David. Thank you so much, Brian, for having me. And if you guys ever want to come out to Jackie Robinson Ballpark, our gates are always open for you.
Of course. Well, thank you guys. Another episode of Legends on Deck podcast. David Conde, I'm Brian Koss, and our special guest, Justin Rocke.
Thank you.